Well, at the start of this week, I had chosen a Bible verse for our worship service. It was going to come from the prophet Amos, a famous verse about calling for justice to roll down like a mighty stream. And then this week happened. I couldn't concentrate on Amos. I couldn't concentrate on much of anything. I think for myself, like most of us, it's been an overwhelming week with events that have been stressful and anxiety filled and the opposite of peaceful. So I felt that I needed a service to help bring me some inner peace, some calmness, some serenity. Again, this week, the election. There have been some very nice references to that in your prayer request. I appreciate it. For myself, I've been watching TV nonstop for about a week. I fall asleep in front of the TV. I get up first thing to turn on what's happened overnight. I can't quit you. I can't quit you, TV. My sleep's disrupted. My stomach hurts. I've had a headache all week. But I did get some wise advice from a couple of good friends. Gary said that he had heard some good advice. Don't gloat if your person wins, and don't despair if your person loses. That's nice. Anna reminded me, don't just keep the faith, but spread the faith. So thank you both for good advice. It's been tough. You all in your prayer request mentioned COVID-19. It is increasing. Tennessee had some of the worst numbers as far as new cases this weekend. The Tennessee Department of Health had been reporting about 2,000 new cases a day across the state of Tennessee. That's bad enough. But on Saturday, the number was 5,000 in one day. And today it was almost 4,000. So the numbers are increasing, and that's evident in what you all shared. More and more of us are having family members and friends who are sick. And if they're not sick, there's still folks testing positive, and there's still folks who are exposed to people that are positive. So the numbers of people affected are just growing astronomically. At Journeys, all this started for us back in March, and for about 6 months, we didn't have any COVID problems. Nobody tested positive, nobody was sick. Then about a month ago, somebody got sick, and then someone else. And just this past week, we had about 7 or 8 employees who tested positive or who had been sick, who had to isolate themselves. It's terrible for their sakes, as you all know from what you shared. But we are an agency supporting adults with disabilities, and statistics show that adults with disabilities have a 3 times greater risk of dying from COVID than the typical population. So it's just been so devastating at work, worrying about our staff and our clients too. There are so many other things we've been worried about for quite a while. We've been worried about systemic racism and the effect it has on so many people in our country. We've been worried about the economy, both in general but also specifically, I think we all know folks who are losing their jobs or not making the paycheck that they used to make. And even though today was a beautiful day outside, we're worried about our planet and what's going to happen in the future. So much to worry about, so much to be anxious for. So I know I needed a service about peace, and I think most of us do. I felt we needed a period tonight to experience some calmness, serenity, quiet, inner peace. I hope this helps us for the next hour, but even more so, I hope it helps us going through the week and going on with our lives. I know, and I imagine you feel it too, we can't go on living at such a high level of stress and tension. So I thought of four simple suggestions for developing serenity, developing inner peace. I'll bet you all have heard of all of these. So this isn't anything profound. It's very simple, very basic. But sometimes in the midst of stress, we forget even the most basic common sense. So I hope this is helpful. The first thing, when we are experiencing stress, anxiety, if there's anything you can do to resolve that problem, do that. Do that. Just this past week, Stephen led us in a class on wrath and anger. And we were talking about how, in ancient times, even probably in the times of our grandparents and our ancestors, that people would get really anxious about something, and then they'd go out and fight whatever the problem was. If they were going to battle, well, they were going to grab their sword or their axe and start hacking away. If the crops had to be brought in because the storm was coming, they would run out to the field and start gathering in the crops. If there was all the work to be done around the house, physical work, well, they'd roll up their sleeves, get in there, and take care of it. Today, so many of the things that make us tense and anxious can't be addressed physically. How can we physically address the problems that we're facing? Well, it's not obvious, but there are some things we can do. For COVID, what we can do and what we must do is keep practicing all the safe methods that we've learned about for months. Just because we've been doing it for 6 or 7 or 8 months doesn't mean we should stop now. In fact, we should do it now more than ever. Wearing a face mask, washing your hands over and over and over, using sanitizer on your hands, keeping social distance, avoiding any kind of crowded places. That's something we can do. And maybe if we do those things, it'll help us feel a little bit of peace about this COVID nightmare that we're experiencing. For the election, well, I think we all did what we could do, and that was vote. I hope you voted for whoever you felt was the better candidate. And then I hope you can feel some peace and some calmness knowing you did what you needed to do. And now we have to lay it down. We have to turn off the news. We have to stop checking the internet every few minutes. We've got to find some peace there. The second thing, my second common sense suggestion, not rocket science at all, but we do have to practice self-care. we have to take care of ourselves. But as we do that, we need to practice moderation and take care of ourselves in a balanced way. We still need to enjoy life. Life isn't the same as it was pre-COVID or pre-politics, but we can still enjoy life. We can eat good food, drink good Diet Cokes or wine or tequila shots, maybe. Read books, watch TV, enjoy music, all of those things in moderation. If we go overboard on anything, even good things, it can be unhealthy. Creativity and art. Some of you have been so creative during this COVID time, making Afghans. Janice made a beautiful rainbow Afghan for me. I love it. Anna made a beautiful heart for us all to enjoy during a worship service. Lots of you have artistic, creative abilities. Experience those now. Physical exercise. I was going to Gold's Gym until March of 2020. I haven't been back since. I'm scared to go back. But I do have a treadmill in my living room right in front of the TV, so I'm trying to use that. Any of us could walk in our neighborhood. The weather right now is beautiful. Exercise. All of these things might help us to enjoy life. Just continue to do them with moderation. Number 3, my third recommendation, my third suggestion is to stay connected with COVID, with our isolation. I live by myself. I know some of you in the room live by yourselves. You can just feel very disconnected from everyone. So we have to make that extra effort. With our family and friends, we need to use the telephone, text, email, send a card, have a Zoom meeting. And even if we can figure out a good place and time to do it, have an in-person meeting with distance. I still am so happy about the meal that I shared with Bill and Janice out at Barfield Park. They were on the far other end of a picnic table with their food, and I was down here by myself, but I actually was talking with somebody face to face. Couldn't believe it. And then Anna and Don came to visit. They brought me some cookies and stood in my driveway while I stood on my sidewalk, distanced, and it was so good to see them. Carrie brought me my Halloween packet just a week or two ago, and we had a nice conversation. We've all got to be more intentional about finding those opportunities, because otherwise we're going to feel like we just don't know anybody anymore. And I tell you, I live by myself, so I know how that feels. Some of you are so blessed. I see it in the Zoom room right now. When you're sitting next to somebody, you are very lucky, and I know you know that. So, and not only just our family and friends, unless of course you count these, but our pets. Our pets are more important than ever. And I see you petting them and rubbing them, and I see the cats walking across the keyboard during worship, and that's wonderful. That's great. So keep taking care of them, loving them. And then finally, even our church group, stay connected here. And I am almost literally preaching to the choir, but come to Zoom room. This makes my week. I don't know about you guys, but to get to see you and see your faces, and sometimes you're smiling and sometimes you're making a funny face while I'm preaching. I don't care. I love it all. It's all good. It's all good. And if you're on Facebook, I don't see you, but later Janice sends me a list of who was there, and I'm always so moved to see the names of the people who joined us, not just local folks, but some people who live very far away. Menelik and Ken just about always join us from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That's a long way. Gary sometimes does. I notice he's playing hooky tonight, but see, he sometimes joins us from Richmond, Virginia. So we just got to keep connecting, with folks. And the fourth simple suggestion, just basic. I'm not sharing anything you probably hadn't heard before, but we should be including some spiritual practices to help us find peace, to find serenity, to find some calmness in our lives. For some of us, it might be prayer. And I always think of that quote by Teresa of Avila, who said, "The best way to pray is the way you pray best." And I love that. There is no one way to say a prayer. So for some of us, it means, put our hands together, kneel on the floor, shut our eyes. For somebody else, my friend Linda Malik, who some of y'all know, she used to talk about driving down the road, and if she saw somebody in trouble, she would say a prayer. Her eyes were open, she's still driving, but she would pray to God, God help that person. That's a prayer. You can pray with your eyes open. You can pray while you do something. You can pray with them shut while you're in bed, when you're at the dinner table. But prayer, I encourage you, just find that best way for you, what works for you. Study's another spiritual practice that we can enjoy. I was so pleased to find the Bible verses that Bill read just a few minutes ago. They made me feel better. The Psalm talked about lay down and go to sleep. I didn't know that was in the Bible. Yeah, I like that one. Taylor was talking about his Sunday afternoon naps. That's good. Lay down and go to sleep. God wants us to. The other one was the other from Philippians, talking about don't worry so much. Put it down, put it aside. So that made me feel good. But the final spiritual practice to mention, the one I really want us to think about for the next few minutes, is how can we bring silence into our lives? Our lives are so full. I mentioned lately, TV on. First time I get up till I go to bed. Some people have music going all the time. If you live with folks, no offense, but there might be a lot of talking going back and forth. Your pets, I know some of y'all's cats meow because I hear them in worship, dogs and cats. And, there's so much noise and busyness in our lives. And oftentimes that's really good. But sometimes we just need a break from it. We need some silence. Taylor's been teaching me some things about silence lately, and I really appreciate learning about it. So tonight in our worship service, there are going to be 3 different periods of silence. Each one is 3 minutes long. And didn't you think for the first one, that was really long? Was anybody besides me just thinking, isn't it 3 minutes? And I couldn't stop thinking about how long is 3 minutes. But that just shows we don't shut down very long throughout the day. I went to a workshop for ministers once, and they were talking about the importance of using silence in worship. And then they said there was a study that showed that the average length of time for a period of silence in a worship service, the average length of time was 7 seconds. 7 seconds. So just imagine if we're going to try to, refill our spiritual tank with 7 seconds of silence. Well, that's not enough. So that's why we're trying 3 minutes. Maybe that's not enough either, but we'll see how that feels tonight. I read this quote. It's attributed to Buddha. I couldn't find out if it's a real quote from Buddha or somebody else said it, and then they said Buddha said it. But we're used to that in Christianity as well, because that's the story of the New Testament. But this quote says, somebody asked Buddha, What have you gained from meditation? And Buddha replied, nothing. But then he added, but let me tell you what I have lost: anger, anxiety, depression, and insecurity. So I really like that quote, whether it's real or not. I'm going to try to remember that one. So tonight we still have two more periods of silence. In fact, one of them coming up right after my message. Here's a few suggestions. When we have a period of silence, get comfortable. Put your feet on the floor. Make sure you're in a comfortable position. Make sure you've already turned off any noise. Close your eyes. Relax your body, relax the muscles in your body. Stephen walked us through a breathing exercise in our study this past week. So you might focus on breathing in and out slowly. Don't hyperventilate. Breathe slowly. And then maybe try to think of nothing. I read that was common in Eastern traditions. Maybe that's one of the reasons some folks use a mantra when they meditate, just a single word over and over and over. Or some Christian traditions use something called a breath prayer. That's a one-sentence prayer that they say over and over when they meditate. Something like, thank you, God. Or, be with me, Jesus. Just something over and over and over. In Western traditions, it's common to meditate on a particular thing. So you might think about God or Jesus or love. But to put something intentionally in your mind and just dwell on that during your time of silence. And it's helpful, as we found tonight, it's helpful to set something as an alarm so you don't have to be thinking about, is that 1 minute? Is that 2 minutes? Is it 3? So go in and set something, a little egg timer or something to come on to tell you when it's time to come back to reality. So I hope something tonight is something that's helpful to you. I cannot continue to be as tense and stressed out as I've been this week, but I'm going to work on it so I'm not. And I pray that all of us may find our own path to serenity, to inner peace. Amen.